Hello, welcome to the channel. This is a short summary of a development that some of you who are interested in this sort of academic stuff might have run across if you're chronically online on Twitter. This is Receptiogate hashtag that sort of a teaching moment for academics in the humanities who would like some fresher examples of the kind of problems with basic fieldcraft in historical research. This is just a summary. I'm far from an expert on this. And of course, things are developing fairly quickly. This all started just before Christmas, and it's kind of built in momentum here over the last couple of days. But as briefly as I can, this is a situation where a academic working in the area of fragmentology, that's the study of fragmentary manuscripts, individual leaves, cuttings, broken up parts, which is a subcategory of codicology, the study of the book, had published their work online, connected with a institution and publishing house called Receptio, and in that work, it appeared to use without attribution material that had been taken from the Medieval Manuscripts Provenance blog. This is a blog run by Peter Kidd. He's been doing this, running this blog for more than 10 years, and was very familiar with the fragmentary manuscript in question. And when this came to his attention, he had a look at this work and had some concerns beyond just the issue of material from his blog appearing in this book without attribution. The reconstruction of fragmentary manuscripts is not a new thing, although with the advent of digital resources, it's much not so much easier, but it's much more. There's a far greater opportunity to do this sort of thing, where you can collect digital images of fragmentary collections and sort of reassemble them virtually, if you couldn't reassemble them literally. And the work in question that Peter Kidd was looking at was one of these reconstructions. And in the descriptions and some of the discussion of the text, it appeared that some of his own material had been used, taken from the blog, and not cited. And in his blog posts, which I've got the address for here, he explains how it's not really possible for the author of this work to have found that material anywhere else. And in particular, some of the images that he used, this one shown on the screen here being a color image of a fragment which he had posted on his website, but that, according to the original possessor of this fragment, had not provided a color image to the author. And the author here is Dr. Carlo Rossi, who also happens to be the director of Receptio Academic Press. So in this reconstruction, some of the other issues was that the missing pieces in the reconstruction weren't quite mentioned. There's also the fact that image from the previous page, which was a color one, couldn't have come from the source she said it did, and so the original owner wasn't being credited. And in the back and forth, Rossi started to try and edit her own work, and we now, on the page here, we can see the updated version, which has removed the color version of this page and substituted a black and white one, which someone could have sourced another way. However, this isn't actually what it seems. But this is just sort of scratching the surface here, because it gets weirder. One of the interesting things that's come out, though, is that this has been an excellent opportunity to explain to people how fragmentology works. There's an example here. This Lisa Fagan Davis's work on the Beauvais Missal, which was I believe it's a 14th century religious manuscript that was broken up, parts of which showed up in the teaching portfolios assembled by the American collector and educator Otto Egge, who's someone I actually have some familiarity with, because my first master's thesis in library science was written on the early developments in digital reconstructions. And so it's if you want to see how this should be done, Receptiogate is a good way of getting into it. But this isn't how Rossi had done it. The other issue with Rossi's work is that the institute and the publishing house that she's associated with it exists, but not exactly in the form that she presents it as. And this became abundantly clear when people started looking into the staff listings on the Receptio webpage. In particular, we have the example of this Paolo Enrico Bernasconi, a legal advisor, and first you get some red flags wondering why a philology of Romance languages institute would need legal representation. But he does come with great credentials, in that his face is familiar to many other sources of legal advice and counsel. So yeah, the legal counsel for Receptio is a stock image, oddly enough, someone used frequently in legal advertising. The same goes for many of the other staff listed for Receptio. We have another stock photo for this Emma Fleury. There is Hannah Arney, who's also stock photos. Now, there is the very unlikely possibility that Receptio's staff has a lot of people who got into stock photography, but that seems unlikely. Plus the fact that it's just about impossible to verify the existence of these people in any other way. And the same goes for the Institute itself. Its webpage has a very nice layout and presentation. It looks very professional. It purports to have a London office. However, that office is sort of at best, it's a hot desk setup. At worst, it's essentially a dead letter drop. This address is associated with a company that lends its address to other companies or entities that want to have a London address, but can't, of course, have any property or anything like that, but also need a non sort of post office box type address for government mail. And there are something like 40,000 businesses registered at this address. And of course, their hoarding is, again, another mock-up from some stock photos. All of this stuff, of course, has been found by people who read the kids' blog and decided to do their own OSINT research on this. The offices, of course, were also found to be stock photos. And then it got weird. This sort of blew up around the 26th, 27th, and as a consequence, someone showed up to troll and threaten and dox Kid. this Sosamon 64 MSS, people, of course, did some more digging, figured that this is probably Carlo Rossi's husband, who's also listed as someone attached to the Institute. His attempts at intimidating a kid were sort of laughable, again, when compared to the sort of work that many of the researchers were doing here, accusing him of hiding behind a false name and being a nobody, all this sort of stuff. And Sir Simon basically admitted that he was, in fact, Rossi's husband and was doing this out of some misguided sense of vindication or something. It's really hard to know what exactly he was thinking. It's sort of a fever dream kind of feeling to it when this all happened. He also set up a couple of sock puppet email accounts to send kid more threatening email, all this sort of stuff. He also happened to use a profile image that was a cartoon drawing of a burglar, an image that came off of Swiss and French security brochures, and his name was referenced one of the first troubadours, so I don't know what he was quite doing with that. But after about 18 hours or so, he was reported for doxing, and his account was frozen pending review. And once he woke up and realized that was going on, he just deleted his entire account. It's particularly amusing with his accusations that Kidd was hiding behind an anonymous blog, when in fact Peter Kidd is a very well-established member of the codicology and manuscript studies field. He was educated at the Courtauld Institute of Art. In the mid-'80s, he worked for the British Museum or British Library, as curator of manuscripts and other institutions. He, in fact, wrote the catalog description for the Sotheby's sale of one of the fragments that's in this reconstruction. A description that Rossi quotes in her book but does not cite. And the complaint that nowhere in that catalog does a kid's name show up sort of doesn't matter. You can still cite the catalog even if there's no author associated with it. And Kidd, of course, is not just some guy with a blog that no one cares about. He's an editor and contributor to dozens of books published by well-established academic and art history presses, whereas Rossi's output is primarily associated with sort of her own vanity institution. At least it's an institution which misrepresents itself and may have been set up with the intention of helping Rossi and others obtain funding grants, of which she has received quite a few, including one for the aforesaid reconstruction. But anyway, here, if you want to look up Peter Kidd, he's got an extensive list of publications on Google Scholar. His citation index is quite respectable, especially for this field. So the lesson here is, and please, this is again just scraping the surface here. There's an enormous amount more to go into, and it's kind of vaguely, kind of like watching a train wreck unfold. If you want to get into this more, best place to start is at Kidd's blog and follow from there. The lesson here, though, that I want to make sure people come away from here is that in this case, as with any case of intellectual dishonesty or plagiarism or attempts to sort of massage other people's material into your own, it's better not to even try. And this is something I tell my students, that if you can find some source to copy to put into your own material, I can find it, and it's very likely I already know about it. So if you're going to try and make your work easier for yourself by pulling stuff off the internet, remember that everyone else can find it too. It's also very likely that we will go looking for it. Researchers, especially in these sorts of fields, love doing this sort of work. It's every part of this is potentially a little mystery, digging around into sources and finding this kind of stuff. We do this as a matter of course in our own research, is going from citation A to find its original source and going back to verify whether or not there is a primary source for it at the beginning, or whether or not it's a figment of someone's imagination. And this is where pedantry is a virtue in this field. Being a stickler for detail and for accuracy isn't just an idiosyncrasy. This is a fundamental element of this type of work, especially in fragmentology, where each fragment is itself an individual item that has its own history, its own background, its own sources, and all of that has to be made clear to the readers. And to quote the excellent screenwriters for The Wire, all the pieces matter. And Receptiogate is a good example of how you can take all of those important pieces and construct a story that the original teller, in this case Dr. Rossi, had no intention of telling. Anyway, I hope that little summary has been useful. If you want to see more of this sort of stuff, please support the channel. You can make a comment, just slap a letter or something into a comment. All of this is important for the algorithm, and like Dr. Rossi, you sometimes have to play the game if you want to get ahead. I also have other content on my Patreon, blah, 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 engagement, so on and so forth. Thanks for listening.